Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
I'm feeling bold today. How about you?
I'm feeling pretty bold. We'll see how exactly bold we both think the other is, because today we'll be doing some bold predictions about college football. There is maybe this is in hopes that there is. We're trying to will the college football season to happen, to speak it into existence. So we thought, what better way to do that than to just have some bold predictions and see how that goes. And then we'll keep track of it as the season goes on. What does the winner win, Tom?
The satisfaction of a job well done and a college football season that they get to watch. That seems like a pretty good prize.
Plus ridiculing the loser.
Well, obviously, that goes
Yes.
without saying.
Yes. So let's go ahead and get started. I guess I will start first. And I don't know if this is bold, and I'm sure you will tell me, but I have Justin Fields winning the Heisman. And sure, he was third last year, but I think it's pretty bold to pick one player to win it. Anybody can win it any given season. There's probably 20 guys that could win it this year. So I'm just going to call my shot right now with Justin Fields winning the Heisman because he's going to be in an awesome offense. He's going to be throwing the ball. He has the hype. Remember last year, Trevor Lawrence kind of had a little slow start, and he was just out of the picture. And then Joe Burrow came in and swept everything. I'm not saying I've seen people say Justin Fields is going to have this Joe Burrow season. Nobody's ever going to have that season in a meaningful year ever again because it was so ridiculous. But I can see 3,500 yards, 4,000 yards of total offense, 50 touchdowns, 13-0. You combine all of those things and sure some spectacular plays. And for me, that spells Justin Fields Heisman. I don't know who comes in second. Trevor Lawrence is going to have some great games, but does he have the Heisman moment? Is he just going to be like Peyton Manning? Like, yeah, he's really good, but he never really wowed us with any, Troy Smith against Penn State type of Heisman moment. So that's why I'm going with Justin Fields. Feel free to tell me that it is not bold at all, Tom.
That is not bold at all, Tony.
Yeah. That's the
Pick,
first one, though.
picking one of the betting favorites to win the Heisman, who's a quarterback on what's going to be a top 5 team. Like, wow, that is. Whew. Hope you're going from spiciest to least spicy because, boy, I don't think I can handle much more heat than that.
Tom, how many Heisman favorites have won the Heisman?
I don't know because the Heisman Trophy
See?
is bad and irrelevant, and I don't really care. As is the long-held editorial position of this podcast.
That is true. That's why I started with that one.
Mm-hmm.
Just get it out of the way. You kind of have to make that proclamation about a Heisman somewhere in a college football podcast. So now that we have done that, what do you have in store that I can then pish bosh?
The Oregon Ducks, ranked number 5 to start the season, open the year 0-2. Host North Dakota State, host Ohio State. New quarterback, 4 new starters on the offensive line. You don't get that real Autzen home field advantage because it's going to be a smaller or non-existent home crowd. Don't schedule North Dakota State, you dumb, stupid idiots. What are you doing? And then Ohio State's Ohio State. Top 5 team starts 0-2, including a loss to an FCS team. That's right. You're getting 07 Michigan. And
Well,
who was the second team that hit to Michigan that year? Oregon.
yeah,
There you
and
go.
they with Dennis Dixon just destroyed them. And North Dakota State, I believe, is coming in with Trey Lance, a quarterback who's being talked about as a top 5 pick. Threw like 28 touchdowns and no interceptions last year as a redshirt freshman. Some ridiculous numbers. So that's pretty good, Tom. I also have an Oregon bold prediction as I'm looking through. This is my final one, so I'll save it because it's quite a bit different than yours.
Uh-oh.
So
I don't think you're going to ingratiate yourself to our listeners. That's my bold prediction is that you will not ingratiate yourself to our listeners with that one.
real. Yeah. Now who's being bold? So I was not bold my first one. You were just not bold right there. I like that. That's a good one. And I can see that happening because that's what North Dakota State does. That is what the Pac-12 does. that's that's Northwestern should be in the Pac-12 for that reason alone. Like, you lose to these uh, not bad teams. North Dakota State is very good, but you shouldn't be losing to North Dakota State if you are a top 5 team, or you're bringing them in. You're not bringing them in to beat you. You're bringing them in to beat them. Yeah, so that's bad. My next one, Rondale Moore will score 20 plus touchdowns this year. I think he scored like 14 as a freshman, missed last year off of injury. This is going to be his last year at Purdue. So they're going to work him as much as they can, knowing that, yeah, we might break him again, but this is still our last opportunity with him. Whether they break him or not, he's going to the NFL after this year. So he's going to be running the ball. They're going to throw it to him 150 times, and he'll catch 110 of them. And there'll be some returns. Who knows? He might play free safety as well. 4 pick sixes, something like that. But I just think they're going to get the ball to him as much as possible. The threat of David Bell and the other receivers there now either makes this more difficult or easier because he's not the only guy in that offense. A lot of this will depend on quarterback play. But for me, I'm going to use him as much as humanly possible, and the humanly possible part is entirely on him. As long as he holds up, I'm just going to keep giving him the ball. And I'm not going to say I'm going to try to break him or run him into the ground. I'm going to try to maximize his NFL value, Tom.
This is like the old idea that nothing parties like a rental. When you rent a car, like, well, it's not going to be mine in a week, so sure. Should I take this speed bump at 55 miles an hour? I mean, there's only one way to find out. I will hate myself if I don't try it. So, yeah, sure, absolutely. I like that one. I considered having Purdue winning the Big Ten West as one of these for me. I don't think it's realistic. It would be bold, but not necessarily realistic. Purdue seems like a team that's going to jump up and get a couple people this year, but not be able to be consistent enough to actually win. Like they'll upset a couple people that they shouldn't, and then somehow finish like 5-3, 4-4 in the conference anyway. But yeah, I like that one. That's good.
So why don't you have them winning it? Is it because of Minnesota? Is it because of Wisconsin? Is it because of some further bold prediction later on?
No, it is because the winner of the Minnesota-Wisconsin game probably wins the Big Ten West this year. So right. I think I feel like Iowa's probably not going to be in great shape this year. So it's probably more of a Minnesota-Wisconsin, and then if Nebraska gets it together, sure, maybe. But yeah, I would say the winner of the Paul Bunyan-Zax game is probably winning the Big Ten West.
And that's at Wisconsin.
Yes. Michigan has multiple starters at quarterback this year. They got Dylan McCaffrey. They got Joe Milton. There's not really a consensus up there right now about who's going to start. You got 4 offensive linemen who are new this year. Someone gets sick. Like, that feels like a year where you've got, someone gets hurt, someone gets sick. There's not a ton of separation between them. I think there may be a little bit of a quarterback shuffle in Ann Arbor this year. What about you?
Yeah, that was if I needed one more, I was going to go Michigan will start 3 quarterbacks this year because of, and they like their redshirt freshman as well, who's like all of the others, a fairly decently highly rated 4-star guy. But I don't know how you can expect Dylan McCaffrey or Milton to be the guy when we haven't seen it from them. We haven't seen consistent play from a Michigan quarterback in a while. Granted, Shea Patterson was able to stay relatively healthy. Dylan McCaffrey likes to run the ball. They like to run him. How well will that serve his body? Like you said, the offensive line is completely reshuffled. So yeah, I don't think that's bold. I think it's a good prediction. I think it's going to happen. So I guess it can still be bold and likely based on how we see things. And maybe other people will be like, September Heisman, Dylan McCaffrey. And it's like, well, that's great, but it might be a different quarterback at Michigan in contention for the October Heisman.
Yes. What if there's an October, friends? It happens many years. What's your next one?
I am going with perhaps the most bold prediction of all time, in my opinion, that I have made.
Justin Fields will start at quarterback for Ohio State?
I'll get to that one. USC opens the season with a win over Alabama in Jerry World. And it's not the boldest, but it could happen. You've got a USC offense, Keaton Slovis, a very good quarterback. Although I'm wondering if we're going to see some sophomore slumps from all of the great true freshman quarterbacks like Keaton Slovis, Sam Howell, Jaden Daniels at Arizona State. There's a couple others out there as well. But I am going to say USC over Alabama. Alabama breaking in a new quarterback, even though he has started now. There's, this is the down swell of Alabama football. We know that Nick Saban, everything is on a decline with Alabama. I think that's pretty clear, and it's going to start right here with USC. But then, Tom, to add on to this, USC will then lose one of their first 3 conference games, which would be either at Stanford, home against Arizona State, or at Utah. And it would be very USC of them to lose 2 of them.
I also had a USC one on here, and I wrote this down, and then I looked up their schedule, and I was like, ooh, I'm not feeling quite as good about this because USC's schedule this year is not great. They get Stanford and Oregon and Washington out of the north. They have to go to Utah. They have Alabama at a neutral site. They play them in Jerry World. They have Notre Dame at home. It was like, ugh, but I needed to fill out my list, so here we go. Clay Helton is still USC's head coach in 2021. I thought, hey, maybe USC goes to the Rose Bowl this year. Maybe it's one of those, and then the schedule is like, no, that's not going to happen. But USC does have financial troubles, and he still has a pretty sizable buyout. And I don't think athletic departments are going to be swimming in money. So I'm going to say that despite being on the hot seat since roughly 2 days after he was hired, Clay Helton, still USC's coach in 2021.
Because Urban Meyer won't want the job? Is he still turning down USC?
Urban Meyer is probably not going to be doing it for class credit, so I'm not sure if USC can afford to pay Clay Helton's buyout and also pay Urban Meyer.
Yeah. My next one. Oh, no, it's your turn. No, you just went.
It's
my turn. Yeah, because the whole Clay Helton thing, which, okay, I'm stunned. Still around. They've been trying to fire him for since they hired him. He's basically George Costanza at USC at this point, and he's going to board himself up into his office. North Carolina over Clemson in the ACC Championship game, which goes against my Sam Howell sophomore slump, but I also already contradicted my Keaton Slovis sophomore slump. That's why I had to get rid of that prediction. So North Carolina over Clemson. North Carolina returns almost everybody. Clemson returns not quite nobody. They still have their talent, and they've been recruiting fine, so all of their replacements would be the same thing as what Ohio State is doing, basically. They're replacing 5-star guys with 5-star guys. You just don't know them yet, and I'm sure that's going to be the same thing with Clemson. But I like North Carolina here, and I'm clearly biased for Sam Howell. The kid was awesome last year as a true freshman quarterback. Better numbers than Trevor Lawrence. And I'm buying into the Mac Brown hype because these aren't soft Texas players. They aren't living in a locker room of wine and cheese like I believe Texas was under Mac Brown for a long time. I think these guys are a little grittier, a little hungrier, finally learning what it is to win. Clemson, meanwhile, what happens if they lose this game? Are they still, if they lose this and they're 12-1, are they still in? They'll have a win over Notre Dame, and that's about it.
And that's about it. And that it just seems like that's the kind of resume that got a bunch of Ohio State teams left out earlier in the college football playoff history. Does Clemson kind of get but we know you're good, so you can just come on, slide on in the side door anyway. Yeah,
they didn't play Stanford football.
Yeah, yeah, I could see that happening. That North Carolina catches them, just catch one bad day. I mean, they almost got them last year in Chapel Hill. That was obviously the biggest scare that that Clemson got during the regular season. So yeah, I could see that. I have a related ACC Coastal one, which is the beautiful, beautiful, beautiful dream of all 7 ACC Coastal teams finishing 4-4 in conference. This is the year it happens. This is the year that everyone goes 4-4 because the ACC Coastal is college football's dumbest division because there's no one terrible, but there's also no one really particularly good. It's just like no one can remember which ACC teams are in which divisions. And it's just like, if you just think about all the teams that are just kind of like, meh, all the time, yeah, those are all the Coastal teams. Virginia Tech, Duke, Georgia Tech, Miami, like North Carolina, they're all in that same division. And over the last 7 years, all 7 teams have represented the division in the ACC conference game, championship game, exactly once. 7 for 7. Pitt. I forgot Pitt. Pitt is the most ACC Coastal team there is. You need a little help. Virginia's probably a little too good. Virginia Tech might be a little too good. Georgia Tech, second year under Jeff Collins, probably not really at a 4-4 level yet. And their schedule, if anything's going to mess this up, it's Georgia Tech's schedule. They have to play Clemson cross division. They have a couple games that are just like, well, they're not going to win that one. So they have to beat Virginia at home. There are a couple like they have to win that game. They play at North Carolina. That's going to be another tough one. But this is me. This is like I am Linus out in the field waiting for the great pumpkin to come every year. Like this is going to be the year it happens. It is one of my favorite, extremely stupid college football things, the ACC Coastal. One of these years is going to happen. I'm just going to keep predicting that this is the year it happens until it really does.
And, a lot of times with these conference ties, they'll just go to the CFP rankings or the BCS rankings or whatever it was as the tiebreaker when it goes down like 4 or 5 spots, 4 or 5 levels. The 5th tiebreaker is where are they in the CFP rankings? If you're 4-4, you are nowhere in the CFP rankings. So, will they need supercomputers to figure this out? You're putting all of this data in because one human mind can't figure out all of these tiebreakers for 7 different teams when it's like, well, let me look. Syracuse or North Carolina beat Pitt, but Pitt beat Virginia, but Virginia beat Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech then beat North Carolina. I don't know if it's possible to go through all of those. You're going to have to punch them in, or do you just draw them out of a hat?
Clemson plays a Voltron of every ACC Coastal team in the ACC Championship game and then loses, and then you get to claim credit for your North Carolina thing because North Carolina was part of it.
Beautiful. Mine, is it my turn now? Yes, Yep. It is. I don't know how bold this is because it happens every year. You just have to figure out which game. Like Oklahoma is going to lose a game on the road in the Big 12. But which game is it? I went with Iowa State. Not super bold. I was going to go with Army, but Army wasn't great last year. And we know Alex Grinch is really, really good as a defensive coordinator. That is a fact.
Citation needed.
So I'm going to go Oklahoma loses at Iowa State, which comes 1 week after the Red River Shootout, which they may or may not win. But that seems like it's prime for Iowa State to topple the Sooners, who will have they'll have a new starting quarterback, but he'll be experienced by that point. That's 5 or 6 games in. Not super bold, but I assume Oklahoma's going to go in there as the favorite. So, got to give me some credit for that, Tom.
Well, I had mine listed from least bold to most bold, and one of the last ones on here is Army beats Oklahoma. I mean, everyone probably remembers Army came real close a couple of years ago, and this is extremely weird. They're playing in Michie Stadium in West Point. That is real weird. That is one of the smallest stadiums in FBS. It is a really cool location. It's a beautiful place to watch a game. If those stands are really full of cadets and fans, it can be a really cool atmosphere. Who knows what that's going to look like this year, but if Oklahoma is getting on a plane and going to, you're flying into New York or you're flying into Newark, New Jersey, and you're busing up there, it's like an hour, something up to West Point. And, it's a noon game, say, so 11 a.m. Central Time. They got a little body clock thing going on. Army's got a decent chunk of their defense back this year. Both teams are starting new quarterbacks. this is not, oh, I'm going to pick a team that's favored to, that's a 3-point underdog to win. That's not what this is about. So yeah, yes, you can't see, but Tony's gesturing like, what, me? Who? Me? Yes, Justin Fields, you. Yeah. So sure, let's go out on a limb. Army beats Oklahoma this year. This is a year when weird stuff's going to happen. If two key Oklahoma players are out that week, maybe that's enough. This is going to be a year that weird stuff happens. So sure, this is the year that Army beats Oklahoma.
Yeah, and I immediately had that one written down. That's going to happen. Then I went and, well, let me check my athlon, see exactly who is Army bringing back. And I saw they're replacing their quarterback. So there goes the Army downfield passing game that we know and love. But no, there just wasn't enough guys returning for me to stick with that pick. I should have. Then we could have been equally bold, and we wouldn't be chastising each other, because I feel like sometimes the people don't like to see us fight.
You wouldn't have picked it as boldly as I did, though. So it's really, you still would have. I didn't like the tone of your voice when you picked that. Yeah. All right, go ahead. You're next.
Believe it. Texas wins at LSU in week 2. We know that LSU has lost Joe Burrow, lost Joe Bradley, retained Ed Orgeron, who is only good when he has the yellow sun of Joe Burrow, which, that kind of almost makes sense. Without him now, sure, they've still got their talent, but he's only ever been a great coach with Joe Burrow and Joe Bradley. And now you've got Texas. I think, Tom, Texas might be back.
The annual bold prediction. It is Joe Brady, by the way, not Joe Bradley.
Sorry, thank you. The being early enough in the season allows me to think that Texas can get it done. And then eventually, like in October, they'll lose somewhere they shouldn't, like at Kansas. I don't know if they play at Kansas, but if they do, take the Jayhawks. So I'm going with Texas at LSU, week 2, early enough for anybody to recover from that loss. But I think right away we might realize that LSU probably isn't LSU anymore.
Yeah, I think LSU falling from 15-0 last year to 9-3, 8-4 this year. I think that's a reasonable expectation. I looked at Texas for this just to what's going to happen with Texas, because it's always interesting. It's never spectacular, but it's always interesting. And their schedule's pretty friendly this year, because it was like, are they going to go 6-6 this year? Or are they going to go 12-0? It's like, no, they'll lose. They'll lose a couple games, but they're not going to go, they're not going to completely faceplant this year, probably. You got Sam Ehlinger back. So, yeah, they'll be fine. They might be like genuinely uninteresting this year, which would be a pretty good season for Texas if it's not laughing and pointing at Texas. Right. So, yeah, that's reasonable. That's fair. Do you want me to stay in the SEC, or do you want me to go with a more overall take here? Or do you want something in the MAC? What do you want next?
Hit me with the MAC.
This is the year Ohio University wins the MAC for the first time since 1968. Frank Solich has done everything except win the MAC there. And here's why this is bold. They just lost one of the best quarterbacks in school history, Nathan Rourke. Good old Air Canada is off to, I presume, the CFL. He is, but without him, they still have probably the best team. SP Plus has them as the best team in the MAC. They get Buffalo at home this year. There's no one in the West that's great. Like Toledo is not what Toledo has been. Northern Illinois is not what Northern Illinois has been. So first time since 1968, Ohio University wins the MAC this year.
So you are picking the best team in the MAC to win the MAC. That's what you're telling me.
I'm picking a team that has not won its conference in 50 years.
The best team in the MAC.
Well, in my opinion, and in the opinion of one other computer-based system. And they were like 50th overall. Buffalo was 54th.
So did you just call yourself a computer-based?
No, SP Plus.
You said one other.
Oh, well.
implying that you yourself are computer-based, which is pretty arrogant.
I mean, we are speaking right now via computer, so in some ways I am computer
All
based.
right. Okay. Okay. All right. You win. Yeah, I like that. It's time. Let's make it happen. The thing about the Mac though is any given day, your season can be derailed. Your race can be derailed by some stupid team on a Tuesday, Wednesday night that the weather is terrible in Ypsilanti on November 7th, and now you're screwed. And it doesn't matter how much better you are because the talent levels are kind of squished a little. Like they're closer all around compared to a Big Ten or any other Power Five teams with the top and the bottom. But if they can get some quarterback play, then yeah, I like that. It's hard to go against Frank Solich in the MAC, even though he hasn't won it. But you never want to play Ohio.
No, no, they are just very consistently a good team. Like they have just people forget how bad they were before he got there. Like they were putrid. I think my wife went to school there, and I think during the 4 years she was there, they won 7 games in 4 years or something like that. And they win 7 games every year now, and then sometimes when they win 9 games,
Mm-hmm.
and then maybe they win 10 games, and then they win a bowl game that you're watching on like December 23rd or so, and you just kind of forget about it, and it's just like, oh, they've never done this in school history before, and they just do it every year now. He is one of the probably the most underrated coaches in the nation in some ways, just because he's been so consistent and so good in a place where they haven't been able to win for so long, and he's just made them a consistent winner. That is super impressive, and something that some maybe current Big Ten West programs might wish that he was maybe coaching them, because they might not have been such a consistent winner over that time period.
I'm imagining in a better time to go out and party as opposed to now, which is not a good time. But Ohio winning the MAC and what the campus area would be like in a normal year. And I imagine it would be pretty fun. Just, thinking back to my own college days, not being at Ohio, but hearing stories about Ohio. And that was when football was bad.
Mm-hmm.
So imagining it being good and the partying being just as good.
But football was bad back then. Halloween, still good.
Exactly. My next one, Indiana and Michigan will finish with the same overall record of 9-4 this year. But it's going to take a bowl win from Indiana and a bowl loss from Michigan. The bowl loss from Michigan that's easy enough. That'll happen. The bowl win for Indiana could be a little tougher deal. I have Michigan beating Indiana, but I think all in all, they will even out and finish with that same record. Even though you look at Michigan's schedule, and I don't have it right here in front of me. If they get that win, they open up the season at Washington. If they get that win, then they will probably be, and I don't know that they do, but they would open up the season like 6-0 before they go to Minnesota. They get that win, which is, I don't know that they do that either. If they're good enough to win at Washington and at Minnesota, they're probably good enough to be 11-0 coming into Ohio Stadium. But Tom, if they're starting multiple quarterbacks this year, it's probably not going to happen. So I see 9-3 in the regular season and losing their bowl game to Texas, and Indiana beating Texas Tech. I don't know.
I am, as always, sort of on board with you here, but slightly more bold.
Mm-hmm.
It's more likely Michigan loses 5 games this year than wins 10. At Washington week 1, then you've got, here's 4 weeks in a row. Ready? Wisconsin at home, Penn State at home, at Michigan State, at Minnesota. Okay? You lose to Washington. You split those 4. You lose maybe a dumb one. I mean, they get Purdue and Indiana at home, but I mean, we said this is the year Purdue's going to beat someone they shouldn't, or this is the year Indiana's going to beat someone they shouldn't. And then they go to Ohio State. You lose at Washington. You split those 4 in that 4 weeks in a row. You lose a dumb one to Purdue or Indiana, and then you lose at Ohio State. It's not, that is not an absolute given. I wouldn't say I would absolutely predict them to win 7-5 in the regular season, but like if you set the over under for them at like 8.5, I don't know which way I'm going on the regular season there. So
And
that's
it
why I say
is,
it's more likely they lose 5 games than win 10.
yeah, I can go with that. And for me, I just assume they win the home games, and it's at Washington, then Ball State, then Arkansas State, and then it's Wisconsin and Penn State at home, at Michigan State, at Minnesota. I don't know what to expect from Michigan State other than not much. Could they surprise? Certainly, it's a rivalry game. But you lose, you start out of the gate with a loss, and who knows what kind of stumbling you're going to do there. You start losing, either you start splitting the Wisconsin and Penn State at home. Now you're 500 before you even get really into the meat of the Big Ten, and you're heading. You may be heading to Minnesota, hoping to stay above 500. So they could have 3 losses pretty quickly, but also those home games are winnable. And Washington, Minnesota, Minnesota may be taking a step back, losing their offensive coordinator, though they seem to be always about PJ Fleck. And PJ Fleck can always have an offense, even though it may take a year or two to build it. They can lose guys, and it still continues on. But I'm with you. 10 wins for this team, that would be a bold prediction. And I don't think either of us went that bold.
No, no.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm willing to predict that a guy who should have been fired 2 years ago has his job a year from now. But no, I'm not going to go Michigan wins 10 games this year bold. No, come on.
I don't know really like the point of my next one, other than I'm just not necessarily a believer in him, and it sounds kind of mean to say. Raheem Jarrett, freshman wide receiver at Maryland, 5-star kid, the number 2 receiver in the nation according to Rivals, will catch fewer than 15 passes this year. It's kind of a pointless prediction. I just wanted to put this out there. I'm not a believer in him. He was committed to LSU, signs with Maryland on signing day, is kind of seen as this next big thing for the Terps. Comparisons to Stephon Diggs. He's not Stephon Diggs. I wrote that in, I think, Maryland preview. I think people need to slow down on him, Maryland people and people from around the nation. He was a guy that looked like he was going to be an Ohio State lock for a while. Ohio State ended up not really needing him in the receivers class in 2020 because they did all right without him. So I don't know. Maybe this is just more of a personal vendetta. It feels like like it's kind of unnecessary. Like this freshman's only going to catch 15 balls. Get this guy out of here. So that's where I am with that. And downplaying any sort of receiver production at Maryland, where they have quarterbacks that are not really quarterbacks. They've played linebackers at quarterback at times. It's not terribly bold. This is the jerk in me coming out. Like, yeah, Raheem Jarrett. No, you're not going to be all that great this year.
I do like you trash talking an 18-year-old on the podcast. That's good. That's good.
Terrible.
I do think Maryland's going to be real bad this year. And you had them. You're doing a series right now on BuckeyeScoop.com where you're previewing Ohio State's 12 opponents from least dangerous to most dangerous, and you've already done the Maryland one, and you haven't done the second one from a MAC team. So yeah, that should give you some indication where Maryland is probably going to finish this year. I think that's going to be a little bit of a process. And I know Mike Loxley's a great recruiter, and everyone's excited. He's really going to revitalize the DMV. It's like, yeah, not this year. He's not, and maybe not a year from now, and yeah, maybe not ever. Who's to say? I mean, Ron Zuck was a great recruiter, but it never really kind of worked out for him at Illinois, and he even got him. He got into a Rose Bowl, but he couldn't do anything consistent. And I don't know that Mike Loxley will even get Maryland to the Ron Zook kind of 9-10 level win team even once or twice. So
can he even get them to Tim Brewster at Minnesota levels?
He can get him to. He'll get him in a bowl game. What did Tim Brewster win? Did he have an 8-win season, 7-win season?
Yeah, I think that was about it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they get an 8-4 year. I mean, the biggest problem they have is they're in the Big Ten East.
Yeah.
So Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan is going to be 0-3 virtually every year. So you got to basically run the table outside of that. So, and they've had some aggressive non-conference scheduling, which has worked out for them because the Texas series worked out great for them. But you have to schedule your non-conference a little more strategically to pile up some more wins if you want to get there. So, yeah, I am all in favor of betting against Maryland this year and maybe for another year or two until and like maybe it works out. But I mean, you talked about Ed Orgeron only shining in the sun of Joe Burrow. Mike Locksley is a head coach. He is not the same. He's a little like Orgeron, where Orgeron is not the same head coach he was when he was the head coach of Ole Miss. But Mike Locksley, however disastrous Ed Orgeron's tenure at Ole Miss was, Mike Locksley's at New Mexico was maybe the worst head coaching tenure in the history of the sport. And it's great that he's a good recruiter. I would like to see it happen on the field before I would feel too comfortable saying, yep, I think it's going to happen now.
Yeah.
Like I want to see a little more. Anytime you go, I think he was like 3-31, something like that. And also punched one of his assistant coaches and broke his jaw. So that's when we say disastrous, the word unblowupable. Yes, that is what disastrous means. All right. So let's see. I'm going to go Georgia. Does not win the SEC East. Does not make a New Year's Six bowl game. Georgia has been a very consistent SEC championship game participant, has been a very consistent participant in the New Year's Six. This year, there's a step back. 2 new teams, neither LSU nor Georgia makes the SEC championship game. Georgia has a new quarterback this year. They have to play at Alabama on September 19th. They host Auburn on October 10th. Florida in the cocktail party on Halloween. They host Tennessee on November 14th. And then they open with Virginia. And I think that's at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. But that's not a total gimme. Like, there's a way they could lose that game. Getting Alabama and Auburn cross division does not help. Florida, I think, should be better this year. And, so you lose the cocktail party, you lose to Alabama, and you lose like maybe one more of those, and all of a sudden you are Alabama playing in the Citrus Bowl against Michigan instead of being one of the New Year's Six teams.
Yeah, I like that. I know a lot of people are talking up Florida right now as well. Georgia having to play Alabama, that's just bad. That's bad luck for them. Maybe it'll be bad luck for Alabama. It's not good luck for either of them. That's for sure. So yeah, I can see that. The people are expecting the offense to just take off now with the new offensive coordinator. Finally got that Jake Fromm out of there. Good riddance. And let's hope that this transfer kid from Wake Forest is the guy that everybody thinks he was when he was at Wake Forest. Sure. Okay. Maybe it'll work out for you. But yeah, I'm with you. We'll see. The defense there is fine. It's an SEC defense. It's Georgia. That's not really been a problem. They can run the ball, but they're kind of like, is there a Les Miles type of thing holding the offense back? And Ed Orgeron was doing that at LSU. And then finally you're like, take it. Somebody just do something with it, and maybe it opens up. I think there's maybe some just – we saw it happen with LSU, so it might happen with Georgia. And it's like, well, you ain't got Joe Burrow. So I don't know if you realize that. But, yeah, I like that one. This one, Ohio State and Oregon will play twice this year. And the first time they play, Tom, will be in Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
That I feel pretty confident about.
Mm-hmm.
Unless, of course, the season doesn't happen. So they will either, how about this? They will either play 0 times or twice. And that second time can either be the Rose Bowl or it can be in the playoffs. I know you think Oregon is going to be terrible this year, but they still might win the Pac-12. And if they do, if Ohio State loses at Penn State. Maybe Penn State runs the table and they go to the playoffs. But I think Ohio State, the number 1 seed in the playoffs. Oregon, if all they do is lose to Ohio State, will probably be the 4 seed. Like, there's no shame in losing to the 1 seed as long as you run through the Pac-12. And we know that you can't put a Pac-12 team higher than a 4. That is law. That is written. That has been debated and decided. A Pac-12 team cannot be higher than a 4 seed. Although the committee might be like, we don't want a rematch in this first round, especially if the other 2 teams are Alabama and Clemson, because it'll be like, well, we want those 2 teams to meet in the finals, or maybe you go with an Ohio State Alabama. That way, there's no Ohio State Clemson rematch right away. But yeah, I'll go Buckeyes and Ducks play twice this year. Hopefully for Ohio State, it ends up better than the last time they played a Pac-12 team twice in a year, which I'm going to assume was UCLA back in 1979.
74, I believe, but yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that's okay. And just for the record, I don't think Oregon's going to be terrible. I think Ohio State's going to be good, and I think Oregon is stupid for scheduling North Dakota State. Guess what? Facts only, friends. Facts only. Yeah, it's certainly possible. And, the idea that Ohio State could lose to Penn State, that's very realistic. That's going to tie right into my last one. But yeah, this is a year when Ohio State could very easily be the number 1 seed. Ohio State could, you lose 1 game somewhere and someone else runs the table. Like, the margin for error is going to be very slim this year, especially, there's been talk about what if it's conference only schedule. It's going to get real unpredictable and unprecedented in a lot of ways. And there is no guarantee Ohio State's in the playoff if they lose 1 game this year. Normally you'd think 11-1, yeah, they win the Big Ten, they're in, it's fine. If it's, if this is an 8-game season or a 10-game season, all conference games, yeah, there is no precedent. There's nothing to go on there. So here's my last one. Ties very much in with that. No one finishes undefeated this season. Everybody loses a game. Just this is there's too much variability, too much unpredictability. On a macro level, I think talent's going to win out. So I think your playoff is probably going to be, if I give you 8 teams, it's going to be 4 of those teams. Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, Oregon, Oklahoma, maybe Florida, pick another couple. But it's going to be from a small group of teams. This is not going to be the year that Pitt wins a national championship. It's not going to be that unpredictable. But on a micro level, week to week, this is the year somebody's quarterback gets sick and they lose to a 3-touchdown underdog. This is the year that, we were talking about Indiana earlier. Indiana beats Michigan or Penn State or Ohio State or something. This is just going to be the year that something weird like that happens, or Purdue beats Michigan, or, Kansas beats Tech. Well, that happens all the time, but you'll just have Clemson will lose to someone weird, or Oregon will lose to Oregon State. There's going to be so much unpredictable stuff happening just on a week-to-week basis that I don't think anyone gets through completely unscathed. And if they get through the regular season unscathed, then your quarterback gets sick the week of the conference championship game, and only 1 team is going to make it through unbeaten anyway in a normal season. So, but this year I think no one does it.
That's a pretty good one. What if, say, Ohio State comes into the Michigan game 11-0, Justin Fields can't play because he's sick, Michigan wins? Do you think Michigan fans would be happy about that? They don't want to win that way, do they?
You think Michigan fans are going to have, if Ohio State's team bus gets lost on the way to the stadium, they are going to print T-shirts with the picture of an empty parking spot in front of Ohio Stadium. They are going to take. I mean, you remember
greatest
the 19
victory ever.
You were exactly. Yeah, this is If it's 0-0 and it doesn't get played, they're going to be channeling E. Gordon Gee. Yep, 100%. Yeah. Now the really interesting conversation there is if Ohio State's 11-0 and they lose to Michigan because Justin Fields is out or they lose to Penn State because Justin Fields is out or whatever. How does the playoff committee factor that in? And you would assume that they would, and you would assume that they would take into account, like, hey, this, whatever team, this, the Oklahoma was missing 4 of its offensive linemen for this one game because they all were sick or whatever. That kind of thing may get written off in a way that it wouldn't in a normal year, just because Oklahoma, by college football playoff law, has to be in the college football playoff and then lose by 3 touchdowns. Otherwise, it doesn't count. The year does not count. So, yeah, it just seems like this is going to be a year where way too much weird stuff happens. There's absolutely no precedent for any of it. And, this seems like, assuming there's a season and a full season, this is going to be a really exciting, wild, unpredictable season. Like, it's going to be 2007 all over again. Like one of those like weird, crazy seasons. And I'm not saying like Kansas is going to be in the, New Year's 6 or anything like that, but just crazy, weird upsets all year. I feel like that's going to happen.
Oklahoma in the playoffs is like the Masters when they have the old timers tee off first. It's like, okay, Oklahoma's in. Now we can begin the playoffs. Yeah, I like that. We do know the committee will take into account injuries, has in the past. I don't know that it has benefited anybody necessarily like it could this year. That will be something to watch. My final one, Penn State and Ohio State will be played at night. Now, why is that bold? Well, you would think this is going to be one of the biggest games of the Big Ten season, which means that probably Fox is going to try to land it when they do their picks. And if Fox lands it, they would put the game on at noon because that's their big noon Saturday kickoffs. However, Penn State may come into this game at like 4-2, which means there's no reason to put it on at noon, assuming there'd be a better game at that point. So then, by virtue of Penn State being worse, the game could then be played at night because it wouldn't be the first game. So it could go on like FS1 for an 8 p.m. kick. So then you would get the whiteout, which would make things more difficult for Ohio State, depending on how many fans are in there. So, Tom, what I'm saying is a better Penn State team would make for an easier trip for Ohio State. Say Penn State is, 6-0 coming into that game. To play Ohio State at noon would be better for the Buckeyes than to play a 4-2 Penn State at night, even though it's not going to be the same kind of whiteout. Granted, this isn't the boldest thing to say that Ohio State and Penn State will play at night. I just think it's interesting that the irony of Penn State being worse could make things more difficult for Ohio State this year.
Yeah, here's Penn State's schedule before that game. Yeah, I could see they could lose a couple games. You've got 2 tough road games before then. You get Kent State at home, at Virginia Tech, San Jose State at home, Northwestern at home, at Michigan, off week, Iowa at home. They could lose those 2 road games. They could lose Virginia Tech. They could lose at Michigan. I don't think, regardless, that is not going to be the normal atmosphere this year. Like there's no way there's 100,000 people in that stadium. You're not going to be able to recreate the atmosphere. Trying to recreate the atmosphere with 25,000 people in the stadium is, I'm sure they're going to do it, but I think that's just going to make it even more, like highlight even more how weird it is that it's not the normal atmosphere. But yeah, I could see that being a night game, but this is a year when Ohio State is going to 2 of the more hostile venues in the country. Autzen is a very tough place to play. Beaver Stadium is a very tough place to play. They're kind of catching a break in not having to deal with all that crowd noise in what are 2 of the louder venues in college football. So of all the years to have to go there, this is not a bad one. It is. I wrote about the Big Ten scheduling earlier this year and how the Big Ten puts its conference schedule together, and talked to someone in the Big Ten office. And it is bizarre how it just constantly works out that it is always a night game on the road. It is always the whiteout game at Penn State when Ohio State goes there. And last year it was a noon game in Columbus. 2017 it was a noon game in Columbus. and I think they're going to be they play Penn State in November. The next couple times it's in Columbus, but the visiting team has to approve a night game in November. So guess what? Penn State's not going to approve a night game in November in Columbus. So it always seems to work out that Penn State's a day game in Columbus and a night game in Happy Valley. So if that works out, that it's a day game this year, or that it's just not a full, true, hostile road game, I'm sure this will be further evidence of the Big Ten's massive anti-Penn State conspiracy, but it also would kind of even things out cosmically a little bit over the last few years in terms of how that schedule's worked out for Penn State.
If they can't get many fans in there, how often are they going to have that lion roaring on the PA? That's just going to be like a constant, just a 10-hour loop. Like you can see some of the videos on YouTube of just a 10-hour loop of just a strange sound. That's just what this is going to be, just a roar, roar, roar. And as you know, my backdrop here is the Happy Valley press box, which you can hear the roar from inside, from outside. Every time we go, somebody is counting the roars, like jotting it down. That's 52, and it's the second quarter. And Penn State's not necessarily always doing so great when certainly not enough to warrant all of these roars. Now I'm wondering, like, do they use, with any of these stadiums, do they use this to make up for the lack of crowd? We've seen some places you do the lights around the stadium, like on the scoreboard, like while Justin Fields is not under center but behind center, and you've got the stadium scoreboard just doing all these flashing lights. You wonder, like, they try to cut the sound down while plays are going on, but they're gonna be, all of these stadiums are gonna be cranking so much noise just to make up for the lack of a crowd that it is going to be almost so annoying that I'd rather just not have the season played at all.
Hard disagree. Would rather have college football, even if it means hearing the stupid lion roar 1,000 times. I don't know. I mean, the Penn State press box is about, like, there's enough space to safely put about 12 people in there, and they put it way more than that in there. I don't have a clue how they're going to space people out in that press box this year. I think you might be sitting out in the stands watching from somewhere outside, but
it's safer. You don't have to worry about hitting your head on a beam.
That's true. Yeah.
Now, granted, they have put wrestling mats around the beams to soften the blow as you smack your head into it. So thank you, Penn State. But
yes, you can actually pass concussion protocol leaving the press box after a game there, which is nice. That's good. That represents progress.
Anything else, Tom? Here's a question I have. Why is Kansas traveling to Coastal Carolina?
Well, I've got to say, I'm not sure which of those teams would be favored in that game. So there's one thing. That may be a recruiting territory thing. Get out and try and recruit, because Kansas is not exactly a hotbed of recruiting, and Kansas is probably not at the top of the list of every hot Texas high school prospect. So you can't just rely on, we'll just pull kids out of Texas. So that might be a recruiting thing. It also might just be I don't know, but that stinks like a 2-for-1 series like Kansas wanted to. Kansas does not want to pay Coastal Carolina $1.5 million to come play in front of 15,000 people. So they did a 2-for-1 series without looking. That would be my guess.
Anything else, Tom? Any less bold things that didn't quite make the list, or anything else before we head out?
Let's see. In the spirit of Justin Fields, I think Ohio State is going to win at least 7 games this year. At least.
Tell me which 7. If you're going to go on a limb, I need to see the branches. All right.
Bowling Green.
All right.
Probably. I've already picked them to beat Oregon. Feel pretty good about Buffalo. Pretty good about Rutgers. This comes to the point of the podcast where I'm like, I actually don't know the Ohio State schedule off the top of my head, and I don't have it in front of me. But they'll get Maryland, they'll get Michigan. It'll be fine. They'll get to at least 7 wins.
All right. Well, for your sake, I hope they do. And if they don't, I'm going to bring this back. And all of Ohio Buckeye fans will just love rubbing it in your face. Ha, ha, ha. You said Ohio State would win 7 games, and they didn't. Ha, ha, ha. and we will all love it. No,
Yeah, if the season gets canceled in like early October, you're just gonna be adding freezing cold takes with this clip just all year until they retweet it. It's gonna be great. Can't wait.
all right. So that is our bold predictions. No, not everything was super bold, but you also don't want to just be wrong about everything. We get tired of that. So there's got to be
Illinois
some.
will make the college football playoff. Like, yeah, I mean, that's bold, but
We do love Lovey. So if you have predictions for us, go ahead and send them to us. We will, since you're going to probably make fun of ours, we would love to make fun of yours. So if you've got something, we will ridicule you. We can do that for an entire show. We'll just roast you. It'll be great. I want to thank you all for listening. Tom, what should people be doing in the mornings at the Buckeye Scoop?
well, you should be listening to the Morning Scoop podcast. We do that every Monday through Friday on BuckeyeScoop.com. That is free content. You can just subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, whatever your podcast platform of choice is. Just search Buckeye Scoop. You can find the Morning Scoop there. You can find all the other great shows from BuckeyeScoop.com. That's all free content. So we have a really, really elite staff. Mark Givler, Bill Green, Alex Gleitman, Ross Fulton. Like there's so much talent and so much information there that it's worth subscribing to probably all of those podcasts. You're going to learn a lot. As we said earlier in the week, if you're the type of person to listen to an Ohio State football podcast in June in the middle of a pandemic, like you are probably very much in the wheelhouse for all of those shows and also for BuckeyeScoop.com in general. Consider becoming a member there. That is a monthly. You get access to a bunch of additional insider content. Our Ask the Insiders message board, where there's a ton of information. And if you do it before July 4th, you can be part of our Founders Club. That will give you access to a whole bunch of special additional benefits and perks, including live events, prizes, all sorts of stuff. But you have to sign up before July 4th. Sign up for a month, give it a month, see how you like it. But as we said the last time, I have not heard anyone say, I did not feel this was worth my time or money. I did not enjoy this. Like, if you are the type of person who thinks, I might enjoy this, you are probably the type of person who would enjoy this. Give it a shot. Sign up before July 4th, because if you sign up on July 5th, you'll miss out on the Founders Club stuff, which is a bunch of additional benefits. So do it now, and that is not something that is going to come back along later. We're doing this once, so sign up now, and get in before that deadline.
Yeah, the variety of podcasts, they're not all an hour long. This one, we went longer than normal because we are very bold. The Morning Scoop is 15, 20 minutes tops. Gives in the Bank is usually like a half hour. So there's plenty of 30-minute shows. Loopcast will be an hour. Silver Bullets will be starting up here shortly. We're bringing them over from the Ozone. That's usually like an hour. But there's 20 minutes, there's 30 minutes, there's 45-minute shows like we do. So there's a wide variety, and the variety of topics is interesting. The variety of viewpoints is also exceptional. So check it all out. I want to thank you all for listening. Have a great, long, extended weekend. Enjoy it, and take care of everybody out there. Take care of yourselves. See ya.